Okay, first we have Tegan's animation. All right, so yeah, that's looking good overall. I think the two main things is that you really want the physicist thing to be, foam coming up, and and I think that the other thing I noticed was it would be nice if the roll animation um, felt like it stuck to the ground more. It seems to be slipping a little bit. So what I would say is just go to your end keyframe here and have it rotate a little bit less by the time it gets to the end of its animation, and just kind of go back and forth and keep playing with that until it appears to stick. The other thing you might consider is just a more interesting font for the high noon. It's okay, it's just maybe a little too plain. You could do something in more of a Western style or something like that. But it's okay as it is. Um, so I was going to talk a little bit about how you could do the fizz thing. And I searched on YouTube looking for a video I thought might work and found this one. And I have a extension installed on YouTube um, called Download YouTube Videos as MP4. So because of that, I have this download button, and I'll go ahead and download the video. I'll just save this right here, and let's go into After Effects. Okay, I'm in After Effects. Let's make a title. And work on our, it's probably going to need to be a lot bigger than this. Okay. And let's do something bold, at least. Oh, there's no bold for that one. It's unfortunate it doesn't show fonts in here. You can just kind of use the down arrow and walk through these until we find something that looks kind of naturally sort of thick. Oh, what was that? Sort of bold version of that? No. Alright, well that's pretty good. So, let's take that, and then I'm going to bring in our other footage. I'm just going to double click here. And here's our footage. And let's drag that in there. And then let's just take a look at this. Looks like we need to, I'm just going to take this and slide it back to where it starts, more where we want it. And I can move this up as well. Maybe to there. And it looks like, well, so this is, I just control click on this to switch it between frames and seconds. And if I look at seconds, this is, obviously this is going to be too slow. Let's say we want it, I don't know, let's say we want to take 5 seconds. So I'm going to have to speed up this footage. So to speed up the footage, I'm going to go to Effect, Time Warp, and it shows up here in my effect control panel. And you don't have to worry about all this stuff. Right at the top, there's speed. Let's try 300, which would be 300%, which would be 3 times the speed. And you may notice that jumped up right there. And so, because since the whole thing's faster, it's like further along in the video up to this point. So I'm just gonna move this back until it goes back down below that. And then let's go back here. Um, and um, so let's see how far that gets in 5 seconds. So yeah, maybe we'll go even faster. Let's try 400. And again, I'll move this back down here, say a little bit more. Okay. And then 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's about right. Obviously, you can play with that time. And then I do need to scale this up. So click on this, S for scale, scale that up to make sure the foam is as wide as the letters, and then move it P for position, adjust the position here. Okay, and then I'll need to use this as the text as a mask for this, and let's see where that gets us. So to do that, where it says track mat here, where it says none, I'm going to say do a alpha mat physicist, and so then we get that, which we may, and yeah, let's just go a little further where that kind of fills up. I'm gonna hit N there, and that puts the end of the work area there. Letter N as in Nancy, and then I'm gonna hit the 0 on the numeric keypad to yeah, I'm kind of liking I think that kind of works like that. So, anyways, that gives you an idea of the tools you can use. You can use different footage or just obviously the timing, position, etc. But I just wanted to give you an idea of a good possible workflow on how you could achieve that effect. Next we have Matt Mitchell. Yeah, that's looking really good. So, I had a couple suggestions. One was to add some motion blur to the animation of the spotlights, and I can show that real quick in After Effects. Just get rid of this one. So if I have just a solid, let's change the fill color to something we can see, and I'll hit P for position and move it forward. And oops. Guess that didn't count as moving it. All right, that'll work. Oh, anyways, yeah, did I have the wrong tool select? I don't know what happened there. Okay, so we have this object moving, and there's no motion blur. To turn on motion blur, you have to do it in 2 places. Let's click back to toggle switches and modes so I get all those columns. And I need to do it up here, which enables motion blur for all the layers. And then I can do it here. And you see that little bit of blur on the edge? Turn it off again, on again. And so it'll only blur, while it's moving. And the faster it's moving, the more it'll blur. For example, if I move this back to make it faster, you should see a little bit more blur. Even faster, even more blur. So the faster it is, the more blur there is. The slower it is, the less blur, until you get to a point where there's really no visible blur at all. There's faster. So anyways, motion blur makes most movement look better, and that's only going to blur stuff you animate using the position and scale and this kind of stuff. It doesn't blur things that were blurred in, for example, the original source footage. Um, so that might just, soften the edge of those and could look good. I think if anything, I might slow these down a touch. And yeah, I really like how that. I think that works well. I just thought, oh, maybe there's some other clever idea you can come up with those letters. By the way, there's something I just wanted to point out for everyone that I think to keep this a little bit more organized is um, in future, if you have additions, rather than creating a whole new post in here, just add a comment to your existing post. So, for example, we've got Cody here, and then we've got Cody again there. And there's several, and then Cody again here. And the trick is that, I'll find it, it's not a big deal, but it just helps keep things organized if you just keep everything all in one. And then, for example, just if you want to add to it, just add comment at the end and then do, new version, new version, new version. And then it's easy for everyone to see sort of the evolution of anything you do during the week. That would really help me out to keep things organized that way. It's not a big deal, it just helps keep things organized because I'm I'm prone to accidentally clicking on the wrong one if you don't do that. No, don't. I mean, I would figure it out, I'm sure, but it's just I don't want to make that mistake. So, because I noticed, again, Angela has her final one later here somewhere, right here, right there. So, and then Lindsay's got one here, and I think that's the last one of Lindsay. Okay, so we'll go to Lindsay next.
There ain't no grave can hold my body down. There ain't no grave can hold my body down.
All right, that's looking good. What I would say is I like the. So let's start with the Toasty Cats thing. So this is a bit too tight in the corner there. One thing they have in After Effects is the title and action safe. So the idea is that you want to keep your titles inside this box here, and you want to keep your most important action inside of that box. Now, to be fair, that's a bit of a relic of the past because on an old CRT television set, they the image got cropped from the original on the television set, and different television sets cropped it more or less. On a newer flat screen, or if you're watching this on the and obviously these like QuickTime movies are on the internet, nothing's getting cropped. You're not losing a single pixel. So to say that it has to be in here to be safe anymore isn't really accurate, but it just sort of gives you a good guideline to keep your text in a nice area where it doesn't feel crowded at the edge. So I would tend to keep your text in the title safe area, or at least in the action safe area, and try not to get too close to the edge. And when I look at this one, we're quite close to the bottom of the edge here. Oh, and then on the motion of this, so it kind of comes out at an angle. And when I think of Toast, I think of it shooting straight up. So I would have it maybe shoot straight up and then kind of arc at the top and then come back down into your final position. And you could also do something like fade the toaster away and have this text. Maybe it goes up and becomes centered, and then maybe this text moves up to be centered underneath it or something, and then it fades down, that kind of thing. Because right now it feels a little incomplete. And then I wouldn't have it overlap this. I would have it faded out before this starts. On this, I actually really like the sketchy look of it, but what's bugging me a little bit is the white. I don't know, the white feels a little out of place or somehow kind of sloppy. Even though I know the sketchy look is intentional, but the white part looks like it was an accident rather than intentional.
There ain't
And again, good choice of font here. Um, I would say that's a bit close to the edge again. And if saddle is capitalized and partner is capitalized, then I would also capitalize the up, because you might not capitalize for, but I would certainly capitalize up. But then again, this is not part of the title. This is like get ready. So I would say you don't. I would probably just use this as lowercase. I would not have that as a capital.
no grave can hold my body down. There ain't no grave.
And again, good. I like the layout here. Again, just a little crowding edge, and I like the background texture.
Can hold my body down.
Yeah, and the animation is good at the end. Maybe you want to do some kind of flash or flare coming out of the gun, even if it's again in still this sketchy style, like hand-drawn looking style. All right, good work on that. Okay, we've got Chris Owens. All right, let's take another look at that. So, I think this one, it's a good concept. I think it could use some work. What I would suggest is if you could find some stock footage of maybe like time-lapse clouds or something, so that this cloud shape is more dynamic, and also that it's not a solid white shape, that it has more detail in it like some of these other clouds. And imagine if that was kind of rolling and swirling as it moved up over this. That would be more interesting. The change in speed feels odd. It goes at one pace and sort of suddenly speeds up there and then slows down again. And maybe you can do, maybe simplify this. So maybe lose the ATC and then just have the one cloud come up from the bottom and have that land. And the other thing is that this text, when these individual letters drop, it's really fast, that productions thing, and when I look at the speed of the cloud moving up and just the general kind of feeling of clouds as this kind of slow and smooth movement, it just seems a jarring kind of juxtaposition to have very fast moving text with slow moving clouds. So yeah, I think maybe just have a little bit more of a simpler kind of text showing up there. And then this, I would steer you away from script type fonts for like a production company name, and maybe just use the same one you use for productions for Above the Clouds. I think that's going to be cleaner. Um, yeah, it's just a little hard to read. So you could go bigger if you wanted to as well. So there's just a few suggestions there. And then this is looking pretty strong. I think that works quite well. The only thing I would say is that save some time at the end. The idea is it's supposed to be 17 seconds, and we're already over 17 seconds. So I think the spinning could end a little sooner. I guess that's okay. But and I think conceptually this is right on, and a look at the texture and the letters, it's all good. You could add some little bullet holes, individual bullet holes in these if you wanted to. Could be kind of fun. But then I just would say, like I was saying, leave some time at the end for the title to sit there. So I would say typically about 3 seconds at the end where the title's there, and then have a fade out at the end. Make sure you include the fade out at the end. Did you have a fade out at the beginning? Fade in? You did. So just make sure you have the fade out at the end. So yeah, there's a few tips for you, and yeah, I think there's a lot of good elements here, and I think with a few improvements, it would be better. And I think the Desperado thing, it's a good concept, and the way the letters spin and reveal is working well. So yeah, keep going, and you'll have a nice piece. Next up, we have Adne. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing your name right. Let me know if I'm not. Let's start it over with the volume. So yeah, there's some good stuff going on here. Let's watch it again. So I think the sun by itself feels out of place. Like it feels like you could start here rather than starting with the sun. Or if you're going to start with the sun, have an image like this where you've got the silhouetted mountains and maybe a kind of a dark blue sort of night sky with like black mountains, and then have the sun rise behind the mountains. But the sun by itself on the screen isn't really doing much at that point. And then and that lightning flash looks good, and the timing's right. And then suddenly we cut back to the sun by itself again, and I think that's kind of. And then the speed of the sun, sort of, it slows down, speeds up a little bit. Am I wrong about that? I guess it just stops there and then kind of starts going again. I think this element here, I think the font is a good choice. I think that's good, if a little tight at the top there, maybe get it a little bit smaller and leave yourself a little bit more room there. And I think this element is nice and interesting and works well. And one thing to think about with the sun is, it is going to be the brightest thing in the frame, and what looks a little bit, I don't know if the word is less realistic, but basically what you'd want is essentially like a white circle, like 100% white circle, which then fades into this kind of tan color here, with a gradient there, because then it gives a sense, because you want this to feel like the source of light in the frame. Instead, this sun is darker than the stuff around it, and then it looks less like a sun and more like a icon for a sun. And I think it would be better if it was just really like a white circle with a fade on the edge, and then these kind of rays coming off here are really doing your work for you to make it feel like a source of light. So that's good. But the circle itself with the kind of beveled edge looks a bit odd. Yeah, and the lightning bolt revealing that works. It's a nice transition. And yeah, just make sure you fade down at the end. So yeah, a few tweaks, and I think this will be better. But I think the cutting back and forth with the sun by itself on the screen is something you should consider, removing or replacing. Okay, next one up is Vanessa. Alright, so yeah, let's give this another view. So, you have a pretty good illustration there with the panda. Um, it's a bit of a mix of styles with the very cartoony panda, the kind of somewhat realistic texture on the font, and the photographs of the rocks and the photographs of the bamboo, and then the blurred background. So I kind of feel like it's a bit much going on here as far as different styles. And I think that, if you were going to have this kind of stack of rocks here and this bamboo here, I think that if it was all in this cartoony style, it would be stronger, because right now it feels like too much of a mix. And I think that, you've got, and I think this texture is not necessarily helping you because it's the texture within the letters has a lot of both color and value contrast. You have these dark dots and this kind of very warm color here and brown and tan, so it's very busy looking text, and which makes it kind of not easy to read, and it adds to the overall busyness of the image. So I think the key here is you've got good elements, it just needs to be simplified. For example, you could use this same text but just have it be a solid color rather than um, the wood texture. And then the panda, it's a good interesting drawing, but I might go a little bigger and maybe not so close to the bottom. He's very crowded along the bottom of the screen. Um, the And then yeah, and then just kind of if you can match the style of the bamboo, or at least a similar style for the bamboo and the rocks as you have with the panda, and you have I think that the other thing is that this spotlight isn't necessarily adding a lot for you, and it doesn't necessarily kind of help tell the story of this. I guess V Panda Productions or um, so where's that? Yeah, I guess. So I think that just have keep it simpler and maybe have the text move in or fade up, and then rather than the zzz thing, what if you had like this back part of the body kind of inflating and deflating a little bit, maybe like a little like twitch of the foot or something like that, just to subtly express the idea, a little flick of the ear or something, a little, just like that kind of thing to make it look like he's sleeping, like maybe like rub the face a little bit or rub the eye, or just it's just some of these very simple subtle movements with the kind of the subtle inflating and deflating breathing thing rather than this way of expressing that the panda is sleeping. So my suggestions are simplify the image, unify the style, lose the Z's, and try to animate the panda as sleeping. And then this, it's just the zooming around is a bit jarring, especially these quick movements and then sudden cuts. So I think that, and then this font, um, it's small and I understand you're trying to match the elements in the scene, but it's, and then in that case, then why would you rotate it? I guess. So I think that I think the concept of the prison cell thing is good, but I think maybe just go simpler. Like, what if you did something like, ooh, here's an idea for you. Um, what if the text showed up as looking like it was a cast shadow on the wall? So, like, as if something was behind this window, and then suddenly we see this slightly blurred text go up, and you get the, you see on this wall like this this shadow kind of come in. It says VPP Studio, and it looks like a cast shadow, and it has the kind of perspective. You can use these brick lines as perspective lines to kind of get it to stretch the same way. And then you do the next title there, the presents, and and you could even do the lawless thing on the same wall and not cut to this, again, very different style. So it's just it's an idea, but use that or think of something like that. So overall, there's a lot of, I know I maybe have seemed like I'm hard on this piece. I think there's a lot of good elements here, but I think some sort of simplifying and unifying is going to be needed to make this into an overall better piece. So Jocelyn ran into an issue here, and I think there's a few things that brought up, and mostly it's about the length of the composition. So let's take a quick look at After Effects composition settings. Hotkey is Control K, and yeah, as someone mentioned, you can just type 1700. And you can see right there it's 17 seconds. Okay, so now the whole composition is 17 seconds. The other thing to look at is, this will allow you to kind of zoom out and see your full thing. You can see it ends at 17 seconds. If I control click on this, you see it switches between frames and seconds to switch there. And then the other thing, so there's the length of the composition, which needs to be 17 seconds, which we just did. This is just zooming in and out of what portion of the composition you're looking at, so that won't affect what renders out. But this next line down, this work area line, will. So if this is here, for example, it's just going to render out that first 10 seconds. If I double click on it, like I just did, it extends to the full length of the timeline. So those are the different things you're going to want to check on your After Effects composition, and I think it sounds like you got some good help from your fellow students on this as well. But let's take a look at what Jocelyn has turned in, and then hopefully she can get the rest of it soon. Okay, so yeah, so not much. Yeah, without any animation, it's a bit hard to say, but good image, good images, good font. Yeah, and I'll do a thorough critique once we get the whole thing. But so far, it's looking promising with that image that we have so far. But obviously, I can't give it a real critique. So go ahead and turn that in. I won't penalize you on being late for that, since you obviously tried to get it on time and just ran into a small technical. So as long as you turn it in the next day or so, then yeah, no problem. Okay, here's Chris. All right, so let's take another look. Simple but fine at Wild West Studios. Again, it works for what it is. It's maybe I don't know. You could try to come up with a more fleshed out concept for it, but it's not bad. It's good. It's clean. It's simple. It's professional, but it's not kind of let's say spreading your wings as far as what you can do with After Effects and design and stuff. And then this gun spinning in is good. I showed earlier using the motion blur in After Effects, and you'll just want to make sure that this button right here is activated, and that the layer that the gun is on has its motion blur activated, and that's going to look a little nicer and smoother if you do that. That's working well. That's good. And then again, I would say, so I think that for the gun firing, you might want to do a little very quick kind of recoil on the gun, maybe a muzzle flash of some kind, maybe the muzzle flash even affects the brightness of the whole frame. I think that would flesh that out again, and I think that again some motion blur on the bullet will be nice, especially considering how fast it's going. It'll be nice and blurry, which is good for that. And fade out the end, part one of the duels, nice extra touch, fade out. Yeah, so again, fine, few additional touches will improve this, and yeah, good work. Okay, here's Angela. She wants to add a sound effect and asking how the tilt animation looks for the gun. Does it appear if the guns are shooting? Wants to animate the hammer as well. Let's get that audio there. Sorry, let's start it over. Okay, let's watch it again and so the balloon kind of speeds up and slows down here. Now a couple, couple thoughts on this. I like the detail of how the balloon appears to be tied to the O. That's cool. If the balloon is has enough lift to lift this weight, that is going to be more taut and straight. I know it's not realistic, obviously, but I'm still within the world of this title, thinking. So you might want to just make that straight, and that kind of back and forth movement, I think it's not helping that much. And again, if you the thing to do is just either do it yourself, get a helium balloon, tie something to it, and watch it go up, or find a video of that. It's not going to move like that. And so there's this side to side movement, and if there was all this side to side movement, and there was a string attached to a somewhat heavy weight, what you'd have is this kind of offset swinging animation where the balloon would move left, and then the frog would swing right and kind of catch up and move left, and it would be this kind of like opposite where this would go left first, and then this would go, and this would go right, and then this would go. And so by when you have it moving back and forth, it's sort of highlighting that you're not doing that. And I'd rather see it move pretty straight and pretty quick if it's not going to have that kind of overlapping action on the animation. Oh, okay, and you got this. This is subtle, but you got that nice movement there. You might consider, splitting this guy into layers and playing with the puppet tool in After Effects to get, it'd be nice to have a little movement on the limbs and stuff like that. A blink would be great, So there's some real opportunity to flesh out the frog and bring it to life more. I think it'd be funnier, kind of, if the frog is pretty still and pretty kind of sort of surrendered to being trapped by this O, but at the same time still being aware and alive. And right now it's obviously very frozen. So kind of if you can get that kind of slow sort of dangly movement on the limbs, again by having it separated into layers, and on top of that using the puppet tool in After Effects, I can try to do a real quick example of that. I'll give it a shot. So I'm going to do a quick and dirty version of this. I only have this Photoshop file, so I don't have the original artwork. So obviously, if you have the original higher res artwork and you have it on a transparent background, you can do kind of a real version of this. But just so you get the idea, let's do kind of a quick and dirty version of being able to move this with the puppet pin tool. Terrible job there. Again, this is the quick and dirty version, not the actual recommended approach. Hopefully have the artwork with the proper stuff. Control J will cut that out and make it a... Am I wrong? Should make it a separate layer. I've done something wrong. Let's undo. And let's copy, paste. And why am I not getting that? It might be because, let's flatten this. Okay, my problem was that I had opened the video as my source in Photoshop, and I had to flatten that before I can use it. And I could try using, at least using the, where is it now? The selection thingy. Quick selection tool, but you see it's kind of getting too much real quick, but let's just start with that, and L for lasso, and then I'm gonna just deselect everything outside of that leg. Yeah, kind of a poor selection there. Okay. So now let's try that Control J again. Let's clean this up a touch. Okay, let's see if that. Oh, I still have the video thing. I'll just. Flatten. Should get rid of the video thing. Let's do copy, paste. Oh, okay, now it's working. Maybe if I do the Control J thing, no. Oh yeah, okay. I thought it should get rid of that. Anyway, so we've got this on a separate layer. So let's just paint out this other one. So this sort of sloppy job. Alt click here. And I'm just painting behind this. Like, whoops. So that with that background color. And again, this is not how I'd actually do this. It's just that I don't have the original material. So we've got a separated leg now. Again, sloppy version. Let's just save as a Photoshop file. Okay, I'll save that. Okay, let's go back to After Effects. And let's make a new composition. And bring in Puppet. And bring in as a composition actually. And it'll give me all my layers. But yeah, we'll just throw this in here. And we can edit inside this composition. And so we've got the two layers there, but the point of this whole story was to use the Puppet tool. So that's this guy right here. So make sure we've got this layer selected. You should name all your layers. And, put some joints in here. And, I mean, you can go nuts with this. The thing is to not put in too many. But just enough to kind of hold stuff together and have it bend the way you want. And then while you're in this tool, see when you roll over one of your already existing dots, it becomes an arrow. So now I can select all these guys. And it's not going to be perfect, but see how you can kind of animate it a little bit? So you could add this kind of subtle movement there. And so mesh deform, I think, puppet pin, I think it might automatically keyframe. Let's see if it does for us. I'm just going to do that and move it a little bit. Does it? Yeah, there we go. So it automatically keyframes, so you don't even have to set your first keyframe. So this is, again, a sloppy version, but it gives you the basic tools you need if you wanted to animate the various limbs. And the reason, you think in theory, oh, well, can't I just put the pins in and not cut out the leg? It's not going to work because it doesn't know, these pixels nearby should not move with this foot. So if I hadn't cut it up, moving this stuff around is going to move that stuff with it. Even if I put a million pins in here, it's going to stretch and pull on the other parts of the character. So you will need to separate out each limb. But then once you do that, it should work pretty well. Yes, so back to this. Hello. Sorry. So imagine that now with a little kind of bounce to the limbs and stuff. Yeah, simple fades, all fine. I would say, yeah, to answer your question, no, the gun is moving back not fast enough. So the kickback should be very fast, like it should move up in, let's say, 2 frames. It should jerk back, and then it could settle back into position over more frames. So it jerks back very quickly in literally 1 or 2 frames, but then it could settle back into position, let's say over 5, 6, 7, those kind of frames to go back into position. So the yeah, one last time. Recoil much faster, but the way it settles back forward is fine. And the recoil right now, it looks like it's just rotating, but it could rotate and also translate its position back a little bit as well. We've got Megan up. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have the audio on. Let's watch that again with the audio. All right, so let's take a look through this. So I think that yeah, the movement in is sort of tricky because I feel like if we're moving in this character, we would tend to want it to be actually fully animated, which I'm not suggesting you do for this class, but and I think that this drawing, while it's got some good basic shapes, it leaves some to be desired. Like this arm is kind of lacking some definition. The fingers look sort of, the claws or whatever look very rushed. There's no kind of joints there or anything. So, I mean, I would almost just remove that entirely unless you want to kind of do a nicer, more natural looking arm there. Um, the the skull fall animation is decent as far as the speed and the bounce. However, I would tend to suggest it come to a rest in a way that it feels like it's resting on the ground. So, for example, maybe those 2 points are kind of resting on, I know there's no line here, but imagine there'd be a horizontal line there and that they're sort of touching the same line, or some part of it look like it's come to rest on the ground might be better. And as I mentioned before in a couple posts, turning on motion blur will smooth some of this stuff out. So the look of the characters is real cartoony here, which is okay. It's kind of an interesting, consistent style, but you might try moving the text around a little bit because you've got the presents right over this cactus and overlapping these shapes, but you could do a presents up here, or you could move the cactus and kind of just move it out of the way so it's not overlapping all these other lines. And then with this text, you know, S is going to be capital, F is going to be capital, by can be lowercase as you have it. And this font, it's the right idea, but I'm wondering if you can get just a better looking version of this. It's looking a little bit, I don't know, sort of low res somehow or something. I think you might maybe go for, just take another look at, there's like dafont.com, dafont.com, and look for another font that just looks, I don't know, a little better, a little kind of nicer design. This R shape is strange in these big serifs here. They just, I don't know. I'm sure there's a kind of a better version of this sort of font we can get. I think that it's okay to do this dissolve, but then we stay in this overlay too long and it becomes a really busy image. And typically what you want your audience looking at this point is the title itself, but there's movement and overlap and a lot's going on here. So go ahead and fade from one to the next, but then just finish the fade and just have these sort of solid characters here, and don't continue the overlay there. Just have it, this top layer go to 100% opaque. And you got the fade out at the end. Or did it complete? Make sure it completely fades out at the end. It looked like it may not have. Okay, so those are a few tips to kind of improve that. So this is Cody, and I did mention earlier it will help me if rather than making a new post each time you do it, you just keep adding comments to your first one, so that I don't mistakenly click on the wrong one. It just keeps everything nice and organized into one continuous sequence. So let's take a look at this. Speed up the guns and bullets. Also added. Let's hold on. Spin to one of the other guns. Okay. All right. So let's take another look at that. So my thought is rather than have them fade in and then start from a stopped position and then start falling, what if they kind of just rain from above and are already falling at full speed? Because I feel like and it looks like actually some of them are doing that, but then some of them, a lot of these fade in and appear. I guess it sort of starts that way. Anyways, that would be tend to be my preference. I think the gun spin's okay. It just feels slow. So I think speed that up and make sure you turn on motion blur, as I've mentioned a couple times before. So you've got a good, and this is looking pretty chunky edge. So maybe maybe that's the way it's scaled up, or without seeing the source files, it's hard to know exactly what's caused that. But get a cleaner edge looking one for this image, because especially next to the nice looking clean text, that it looks like it's not anti-aliased or something. So clean that up, and yeah, I would just have it spin in quick with some motion blur and then stop. The thing is, you've got 17 seconds here. You've got the kind of logo thing, but you don't have the movie title. So I think you want to get out of this sooner. And here's what I actually would do here. I would say start like with exactly what you have, and start here and just fade up on this with everything already moving, and then you cut the 4 seconds off the beginning, and then speed this part up a lot with the motion blur. Like right now that's going from what, sorry, I missed it, from 9 seconds to 12 seconds. Call it like 3, maybe even 4 seconds. do it in like 1 second. Just spin in quick and stop, and have that fade up. So you've caught 4 seconds off the beginning, get another 3 seconds off of the gun spin. So then you have, you've made up for 5 seconds, and then speed this up. Don't have that slowly move up. Just have it spin into position and stop, and you can cut some of this out, and then that will leave the time you need at the end to add a movie title, because you are missing a title of the film. You have Gunslinger Films, and then you need to have a movie title as well. But it's a it's a really good look on here. It's nice how it looks. Okay, next we have Cravan. Alright, so there's I think there's a nice look to the images and the kind of textures. It has a consistent look. The way that fades in is working. I think that the text, because it's such a swirly script, might be nice to go a little bigger. Maybe you want to do like Buckrow Studios Presents, and you certainly have a lot of empty space in there to work with. Um, and maybe you could do like more animated but quick masks on these to kind of give it sort of the feel that each one's being written. To actually animate where it's written is quite a lot of work, and I wouldn't necessarily ask you to do that, but maybe like, sort of a left to right quick kind of, or anyways, you can mess with it, but I think bigger might be nicer to make it a little more legible. um, I think that up and down flashing doesn't really evoke much, and it looks right now just strange, so I might cut that. I think this fading in is working okay, and again you have this sort of texture that's going with everything else, so it's good looking finished image. I think that to your question, do a moving shadow of a cowboy's upper torso and arm shooting a gun. I guess it's depends on what you're starting with and what you're working with. If you had like a video of a silhouetted arm firing a gun, that would be great. And then you could just stick it on top of this and adjust, for example, the transparency, or do a key on the either luminance or the color to get rid of that. So if you had that sort of source footage, maybe you could find it from something like a silhouetted arm, or even you know, if it was an arm against a solid background, then you could adjust the levels to make it kind of a black and white image. So anyways, if you find some good source footage, let me know, and I could help guide you through how you might do that. Or you could have a still image of the arm, and as you've said, play with a puppet tool, which I demonstrated earlier in this video, and try to animate it that way. I think that the kind of nicer, more successful approach would be if you could find actual footage of someone doing that. I think, and then treat it and make it look like it's a shadow cast. I think that's going to look better than trying to animate a 2D image using the puppet tool. But either way, if you need help with that, let me know. Okay, next up is Karen. All right, so let's take a look through that again. I think this dropping letter by letter is, I think I get that it follows the theme of fallen stars since they're all falling, but it's taking quite a long time. So maybe you could really speed that up. And one nice way to do that is, right now it's like the one L completely starts and finishes before the next one starts and finishes. And rather than do that, like you have the F here, take the whole kind of layer for the A and scooch it back so, as soon as the F starts falling, the A is already, and then this next L is already starting to fall. And then just as soon as that's down a little bit, this next all, and so they're all overlap. Their movement is all overlapping each other significantly, and I'll have this nicer kind of much faster a ripple effect rather than this what feels like a somewhat drawn out um, length of time to have those letters come into view. The other thing is you have the studio name, but you still need to do the film name. So you need a film title animation of some kind as well. So you'll want to add that. And I think that, yeah, I mean, it can be as simple as like a little sort of starburst glow thing. You could probably make that in Photoshop yourself, or there might even be like a filter if you just make a circle that gives like a star glow on it. God, I feel like there is something like that. Not sure. Anyways, you could just kind of create that and maybe make a bigger one of that and just have that moving rather than this, like you said, this is a placeholder star, this very iconic looking star. And I might kind of, you know, just move it real fast and have some motion blur on it rather than this very slow movement. So speed this whole thing up a lot, and then you'll need to add the title as well, the film title. So here's Jocelyn. I mistakenly did not see this post here at the end, so we can see the whole thing now, which is great. And it's also back to my point about please, if you could just try and keep all of your posts in one thread rather than making new posts, just to add comment and then put your new versions in the same thread. It helps me out so I don't make this mistake. Um, okay, so let's take another look at that. Um, I think, yeah, one thing you mentioned in the comment. So, anyways, good choice of text, good choice of background, nice illustration here. The You mentioned the white on white issue with the text. I think if it just didn't overlap the moon, you could sort that out. So maybe, either in Photoshop, kind of moving the moon up, or taking the whole background image and scaling it up to get it kind of scooched up further, or moving this text down a little bit. There's a lot of choices to just, but I think it doesn't, when you look at it against this gray background, the white's fine, but it's just up against the moon that it's competing. Um, and, um, and yeah, I mean, not too much, animation, but maybe you wouldn't want it overdone anyways. Oh, another thing you might do that might kind of help the look of this and, um, help that with that issue of the white on white is to blur the background image. Because it also, I think that might help a little bit with the sort of contrast between the very sort of illustration look of the lips and the sort of more photographic look of the background. So consider that blurring the background. See if you like it. Black is a little long there. So it's a cool bit of footage there with the pills falling and works well for the concept, the dock. I think that what you end up with though is kind of a busy background to kind of have the text on top. So what you might want to do is first of all, again, if you scaled this up a little bit, you'd have the room to kind of scoot it down. So a lot of them are bouncing along this line, and maybe if they were bouncing a little lower, that would help. Also, you could have the title higher in the screen. You can do both of those things or either of those things. And then once again, either, maybe start out with this in focus. And you have some extra time to do this because you have so much black there. So start out with this in focus, and then maybe like here, animate the blur so it starts blurring, and then fade up the title. And consider using something that's not a script type font. See if you like, because script, I don't know, they're just challenging for titles. They don't always look great. So I think, yeah, if this is blurred by the time the text comes up, it's going to be easier to read and not feel so busy. And if it's not a script font, it's going to be easier to read. But yeah, some nice elements here. You're working with some good material. And last in this group is Jay's. It's re-uploaded there. Let's take a look. Alright, so it's kind of a simple and clean look. Let's take another view of it. You're working with very kind of simple and iconic shapes, which is okay. I think that what would help, though, is if the movement was more bird-like. So take a look at videos of birds, and they do these very quick, very snappy movements. Those first were good, but I think, maybe don't arc as high. Just do these little kind of very shallow hop, hop, with like little pauses in between them. As I've mentioned in earlier videos, you'll want to turn on motion blur, and that will help with this. Maybe give it an eye of some kind, that might help, and maybe, again, you could stick with simple shapes, but give it some feet. And then again, that does not feel bird-like, that movement, because it's just very slow and even, and an actual bird would have to kind of flap up to get in there. So and so yeah, I think, again, if you can make the, maybe have it feel like it's flapping up, and maybe have like wings kind of turning on and off. Again, you could stick with this iconic sort of simple shape look to it, even if it was sort of these half circles here that kind of appear and disappear. But it's about the timing and the motion. If it felt like the speed and movement of flight, like the kind of lift, 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 and then drop. Again, refer to some video footage to get some accurate reference. And I think if the timing and movement felt like that, then we would be more sort of forgiving of the very simple look to the shapes. And this is okay. It's just a little bit too stretched, and you're crowding the edge of the screen. So give yourself some more room at the edges. So kind of maybe make it less stretched, but certainly, yeah, give yourself some room on the edges. And then, yeah, the gunshot thing works for the O. That's nice. And yeah, rather than cutting to black, if you can fade to black, that'll be better. Try to keep it to you're about 17 seconds. That's fine. Okay, there we go. Good work, everyone.